Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Capco Technologists, Pathway into Tech Consulting. We're currently just waiting for other participants to join, and we'll begin in a minute or so. Obviously, I'll get into introductions in a minute, but how is everyone feeling today? How's Tuesday treating everyone?
It's going good.
Good to hear. We'll just wait for a few more participants to join. Brilliant. So we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name's Ellis Wadsworth, and I'm a Senior Talent Acquisition Manager here at HackerJob. Today, I'm going to be the moderator of the Capco Technologists Pathway into Tech Consulting event. Today, you'll hear insightful information from a lineup of amazing female Capco speakers who have made the switch to tech. Capco is a global management technology consultancy dedicated to the financial services and energy industries. With a growing client portfolio comprising of over 100 global organizations, Capco operates at the intersection of business and technology by combining innovative thinking with unrivaled industry knowledge to deliver end-to-end data-driven solutions and fast-track digital initiatives for banking and payments, capital markets, wealth and asset management, insurance, and the energy sector. Today, we're going to talk more about how to land a tech consulting position, how to continuously improve your knowledge, and about career opportunities at Capco. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation. And we also have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Firstly, we have Zoe Boucher-Nogher. She is a solution architect at Capco. We have Klaudia Zawrotna, software engineer at Capco. And finally, Kiah Hewitt, front-end engineer at Capco. Happy to see all of you here today, and let's get into it.
Hello, everyone. It's great to have you with us today. My name is Klaudia, and in case you ever wondered, this is how half an architect and half computer scientist looks like. Next 15 minutes, I will be talking exactly about that combo, transition from design to technology sector. If growing up, you felt both excited and overwhelmed because simply there are just too many cool things to explore in life, then you can give me a high five. If you also changed your whole life plan and career trajectory each year, being a great project starter, just to reach that dangerous zone of boredom again, then we should probably grab a coffee after this talk. It's okay. We simply just want to have it all. And today I will tell you how I found what this all means to me, or at least until I find the next most exciting career path ever. I would like to share with you my observation on what two seemingly very different disciplines, design and software engineering, have in common. I would like to show you on my example how your unique perspective has already made you perfectly capable to make the switch into tech that you are thinking of making. So there we are. Let's celebrate our growing past versions of ourselves and dive in. Now, a little throwback Tuesday to year 2016. Architecture school was lots of fun. Lots of drawing, lots of model making, occasional tears at weekly design studio critiques, but more about that a bit later. Also plenty of computer work. When I first started my master's in computer science, I thought that the only way to succeed in this industry was to conform to the rules. But very soon, it felt like losing my own identity. Taking a step back, I realized that it is in the difference where my superpower lies. But let's do it step by step. So, firstly, the process, or every design student's favorite portfolio part. Design or design thinking lies at the intersection of both architecture and software. The process of creating a digital product is in nature very similar to architectural thinking process. First key characteristic is iteration. In reality, we use incremental approach to software design. It is, however, the speed of iterations that differs between the two disciplines. Working as a designer means learning through a very intense iterative process, brainstorming, prototyping in various media before finding the ultimate solution. This experimental methodology is transferable to creating software application. Similarly, a feedback loop. In software engineering, the loop is much shorter and decisions, believe it or not, much more informed than when it comes to designing a building, especially when working in an agile manner. Building a building takes about 5 years, a new app feature probably around 2-week-long sprint. In architecture, the process stops when the design is materialized. You move away from the drawing board, go to construction sites, and then you have a building. Only then you can really see if the exposed concrete on walls and floors and ceilings really was a good idea, or you accidentally just designed a prison. It's a true story, by the way. While in technology, the iteration doesn't stop. Not only do you test your code all along throughout the development, but you test your app with users. You get instant feedback and you are able to iterate based on that, which is not possible in architecture, because once you have a building, you just have it. Secondly, skills, but not the ones mentioned in software engineering job adverts. Systematic thinking ability is a trait valuable for both architects and computer scientists. Think of considering all different elements of the app, or a skyscraper, or a city. It's this ability to break down complex projects into small actionable components. From big picture, like data storage, information architecture, to polishing that interface component. To be able to switch in seeing problems and evaluating solutions in different perspectives is crucial, whether we are designing a piece of software, a building, or a city. Next is being comfortable with change of requirements, because the more complex the service gets, the more changes you can expect, especially in consulting. Now, take a guess who was deploying last feature to production last night. As a software engineer, you need to move fast and you make mistakes early on. That is something that we get good at in design school. Remember the tears I mentioned at the beginning? Well, this is where it comes. You need to leave your ego out of the question. Design discipline teaches you the resilience, the determination, which proves very useful when looking at the bugs for like 3 days in a row. So at the core of architectural education has been executing projects from sketch to technical drawings, physical models in a highly organized and strategic manner. This teaches you the rigor, requires passion for craftsmanship that designers have. I believe that if you can design something, then you can design anything. It's just a matter of medium that you're operating in and knowing exactly what your audience is. Lastly, the environment. The best part, the team. It's the collaborative nature of bringing various professionals in architecture firm with the back and forth conversations between architects and engineers of various kinds. An insider view is that it's a love-hate relationship. The same applies to functional team in technology, and it often is love-hate relationship as well between your business analysts, data analysts, and engineers. Architectural education is like running your own startup. It requires mentality of wanting to change things, update existing systems. It also teaches you empathy. This is exactly what consulting is like. You get a chance to learn from many talented people from many paths, and you get to wear many different hats. You can explore as little or as much as you want, depending on your interests. And this is what being at Capco is like. So, as my last words, I would like to remind you that the distance between your dreams and reality is called action. I hope you don't forget how highly capable you are. So feel the fear, like I certainly did, but just do it anyway, because the scary choice will help you grow the most, just like it did for me.
Thanks, Klaudia. Hi, so I'm Kiah, and as it says on the tin, I'm going to be talking about the sort of practical elements of my journey from fashion to bootcamp to engineering. Next slide. So to give a bit of context on my background, I came from a very non-traditional background as tech journeys go. I came from a very working class background, so I didn't have any real forms of high level education. I didn't have the leverage to kind of go to uni, didn't choose to do that. So I didn't do a computer science degree or anything like that. I was very, I did a couple of years at college, was very work focused, wanted to start earning money. So I then went into my merchandising career, which I spent 7 years in buying and merchandising in the fashion industry, doing merchandising, which is essentially analysing sales and stock data, building fancy Excel sheets, and then producing business strategies and sales strategies and telling the buyers what to buy, basically. Got to junior management level, and then for various reasons decided I wanted to leave the fashion industry. One of those reasons was sort of I wanted to learn something new. I wanted to challenge my brain a little bit more and learn a new skill. I also wanted a skill that I had autonomy over and I could sell in my way and use in my way and build things with. So yeah, next slide. So I started, well, firstly, I played with a whole bunch of resources online, which if you're ever thinking about doing a boot camp, I'd really recommend. So just learning some basic web development skills, learning a coding language or sort of playing around with one to actually know whether you enjoy coding before you ever do a software development bootcamp. After sort of analysing how my brain works, what I enjoy, sort of I have a lot of problem solving skills and that sort of thing, I decided on doing a bootcamp, took the plunge, decided on a bootcamp called Makers, which you may have heard of. They are very holistic. They treat you as an adult. They're not like, it's not like being a student in a school classroom. You get out of it what you put into it, essentially. It's the course I did, they do a variety, but the course I did was a 4 months full-time intensive, and it was very, very intense. Trying to learn how to be a software developer in 4 months is a lot. The great things they do are teaching you how to think like a software developer or an engineer. So taking a problem, breaking it down into digestible chunks, getting to the root of that problem, and then building back up a solution and forming a unique and personal process that you can take forward and solve whatever problem you need to in future. They also teach you how to learn anything, which arguably I think is more important than just being a great coder. You constantly, whatever you do in software, you constantly go through a cycle of learning new things all of the time. So forming your own process of how to make that learning efficient and useful is really important. The other thing they give you is a community and a network. You're a product of your environment usually. So if you surround yourself with people that have like-minded goals or actually are even better than you at the thing you want to do or the person you want to be, then you will sort of organically grow into that role. So that was the boot camp. Next slide. And then, so the next slide is about job hunting, which for the majority of people who attend boot camps, they want to get a job out of it. They can also be very financially stressful, so you ordinarily want to get a job at the end. The number one thing I'd say about job hunting after a boot camp or any time in software is it's a numbers game, much more so than other industries actually. So don't feel guilty about playing the game if that's what you're doing at the moment. Be prepared to fail a lot. Software interviews are so specific and they are hard, so you will fail. There'll be in one of my useful links, I've attached a link that describes it really well and gives a diagram of the kind of funnel. But you'll apply for a whole bunch of jobs within the relevant tech stack you want to work in. A small amount of those will go to first stage, a smaller amount of those will go to tech test stage, and an even smaller amount of those will go to final stage. Everyone who applies for jobs in software fails time and time and time again. It almost becomes like habit. The main thing I would say is sort of if you're first, especially when you're first starting out, is apply for a bunch of things you're less fussed about. So things that's still relevant to your tech stack, but that you're less fussed about. Get that practice in with just interviewing in general, answering technology-based questions, and then actually some practice with tech tests. Every single company tests your technology skills in a totally different way. Even if you're applying for the same tech stack throughout various companies, you'll be tested in a different way. So don't kick yourself if you don't pass all of these tech tests. In fact, you'll probably pass a few of them if you're lucky. So yeah, essentially top line, it's a numbers game. Apply for a whole bunch. Don't do too many at once, but apply for a whole bunch, get some practice in, and be prepared for the long haul because it will take some time to get there. The other thing that I think, similarly to when you're at the bootcamp, when you're job hunting, build a network. So utilize things like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, coding meetups, coding events, utilize your community that you've built up in a bootcamp or wherever you've come from. Compare job offers, compare tech tests, just basically knowledge transfer, and it really helps. And it helps to know that other people are going through the same thing and to sort of support each other. Focus your projects. So technology is so widespread and it's so easy to get sort of to digress and get sucked into various things. If you've learned a skill recently and you want to focus on that skill, continuously keep learning it, keep focusing on that skill and homing in on your expertise. You won't be able to answer every single question in a technology interview, but if you can answer a few things really well, or if you can demonstrate the skills that you have learned, that shows your knowledge, your ability to apply that knowledge and your ability to learn. So just do one thing really, really well, basically, and keep practicing that thing. Make the process smart. So I've left a bunch of tips there, but essentially don't spend hours designing your CV. Use a template automation tool. There's so many things out there, job hunting tools, organizing your job hunting process, checking out companies. Utilize all of these online things that we have now because it will make your process a lot smarter and a lot more efficient. Most importantly, it's a two-way experience. So question them a lot too. And this is very important when you're a junior. And I would say even more so when you come from a boot camp. You're a very specific person and you need a specific role. So question them about your roadmap, what they think you'll be working on a day-to-day basis and long term. Question them about how they support juniors and how they envision supporting someone from a boot camp. You want to know that they've mindfully thought about the fact that you're coming from a boot camp, that they value the fact that you're coming from a boot camp, but also that they can support you in that journey. Next slide. And then your first role. So eventually you will get a first role, no matter how long that takes. My tips are, so independently, whether it's within company time or outside of company time, you don't have to be a developer that spends hours and hours coding outside company time, but at least do a bit to make sure that you continue to become an expert in that one thing that I spoke about before. Just continue to build up a skill. It will increase your confidence. It will help you have something to talk about at work, have something to talk about, have something you know really well, and that increases your confidence to learn other things too. Within the company, just try and remember that you have learned how to be a junior software developer, not the whole digital department. So you're going to come in and there's going to be other departments there, especially if you've done a boot camp, that you don't have much knowledge around. So architecture or the whole testing department, you might have learned a bit about testing, but maybe not the whole thing. UX, UI, whatever it is, you're not going to know all of these things. So when you're asked about them, don't be afraid to say that you don't know. Also take an interest in those departments because they will help your own job come together. Using the training benefits, like absolutely milking the training benefits, especially as a junior, because that's the time you're going to have time to actually really use those benefits. So use those. Really importantly, build a roadmap with your manager, make it realistic and really specific. That roadmap can change and can adapt as frequently as you want it to. But if you've got clear steps in place to work towards, you'll never stand still. And in overwhelming times, you'll constantly have something to keep you going and keep you progressing. Thing I think is really underrated actually, and isn't spoken about enough, is looking after your mind and well-being. Actually, especially if you've done a boot camp, you've just made a huge life change. You've changed what you're looking at, what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis, who you're surrounded by, the environment you're in. You've learned a whole new skill. You've changed into a whole new industry probably. So there's a lot of change, and looking after, having some like fundamental routine practices personal to you that help you keep healthy and keep going are really important, and setting boundaries on those is really important. And then within the tech, within the company, the top line takeaway here is that it will be really daunting and really overwhelming. You've gone from working in small teams and student projects to working in a potentially really large team, or might not be a large team, but it will probably be a really large code base or a large Git repository. You're learning brand new Git workflows. You're learning things about DevOps you never knew before. You're going to have to constantly debug. You're going to have to debug so much more than in student projects because you've got a huge code base there that's got deep-rooted bugs within it. Very importantly, everyone will have an opinion. Tech is so widespread and everyone knows something about something. So everyone will have an opinion, and quite often that opinion is presented sound like a fact. Try and use what you can from those opinions, but take them with a pinch of salt and stick with your plan. Stick with your plan, stick with your roadmap, and keep doing the things you're doing. And eventually you'll get to a place where you feel like a solid developer. So yeah, those are my practical tips. Hopefully that was useful for some people. On the next slide, I've got some useful links. I've also got my contact details there. If you want to drop me a DM about any of it, I'm happy to answer questions. Yeah, and over to you, Zoe.
I wasn't muted, sorry about that. Thanks. So I'm going to be giving a talk about curiosity and not so traditional journey into technology, so bear with me. Thank you. The first and most simplest emotion which we discover in the human mind is curiosity by Edmund Burke. To be curious is to want to know or learn something. To be curious is to act on our questions. To be curious is to see opportunities for growth. And being curious is what made me have the ability to sit or stand before you giving this talk. Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe Boucher-Nogher, and I would first like to say that I am proud of your curiosity. And I would like to give a warm welcome to everyone. Now, I know what you are expecting from my section, as from the speaker's standpoint, I probably have traveled the most stereotypical journey into technology. However, the solution architect consultant who stands before you would be nothing without the journey that younger Zoe took. You see on the surface someone who got from point A to B. I went to university and graduated with a first-class degree in computer science with software engineering. And then I went into the world of work and took on many roles in the technology space. One was quite literally a software engineering role. However, that path in its entirety was not linear, but it did have a single guiding light: my curiosity. And hopefully by the end of my talk, you too will be a tiny bit more curious. So let's go back to the early days, secondary school. When you think of someone who is coding, the following images come to mind and a stereotype appears, but the one I always questioned was the idea that an interest in computer science was either something you were told about or stumbled upon. Yes, I use technology constantly as a millennial, but when I was younger, I was not the person who questioned my Windows XP computer working, let alone how it searched the globe for information. I simply wanted to use it. This was perpetuated by the fact that computer science wasn't even a subject taught at my school until I left in 2013. This school is an all-girls school and was truly breaking the mold for STEM, but technology had not quite caught up. The IT that I was taught was more about how to use Excel, which comes in handy now, but at the time I found it boring, to be honest. It didn't create a spark. I wanted to be intellectually challenged, so when I chose my A-levels, IT was not even a consideration. I chose to take physics, maths, geography, and music, a well-rounded mixed bag, but boy, did I come to regret that. A-levels for me can only be described as hell incarnate, and I'm not kidding. At one point I was taking 12 exams over 2 days. Never again. Those 2 years gave me a reality check, and that intellectual curiosity taught me a lesson I live by today. I looked inwards and asked myself questions about the choices I had made. With the trajectory my life was going, would I be happy to keep on this route, forcing myself into these challenging situations? Or would I want to do something that brings me joy at the same time? I think the question was quite clear. I would rather enjoy what I'm doing, but how could I pivot away from that route? Well, I broke down what I liked about those subjects. Physics and maths were logical, defined, and had rules to follow. Geography was expansive, and like the previous subjects, it underpinned the way the world worked. And finally, music. Well, music was creative and enhanced the way that people lived their lives. After I split everything into this, I realized that my subconscious had been storing information about a subject that covered all of this, which I had previously dismissed. You see, my favorite relative, my uncle, had a habit of trying to cram his hobbies into me. And whenever I sat in front of the computer to play a game, he would always come in and explain how the PC could run it. You could say that he Pavlov dogged me into liking computers, and I was curious. At first, I looked at courses ranging from musical composition for film and games, double majoring in Japanese and computer science. However, the more I looked into computing, I realized that not only did I find it, dare I say, easy, but it also checked every single box. And the fact that the salary would be high, well, that was not a bad shout at all. So I had made my choice. Computer science it was. However, there was an issue I had completely forgotten about because of my curiosity. You all should remember that Lady Gaga quote, there can be 100 people in the room and 99 don't believe in you, but one does. Take that and rephrase it to there can be 100 people in the room and 97 are men studying computer science. My academic world was turned upside down. Now I had to think about the gender gap and how a male-dominated course was going to affect my life. I was the minority in every sense of the word. I was female, a person of color who had not been interested in coding her entire life. Yet here I was, and not to brag, I was crushing it. And I was so perplexed as to why more women were not taking the course. Technology underpins everything and is constantly evolving. There are so many different areas from technical coding to non-technical application. It is in every field of interest. You could literally line up all of the companies and throw a dart at them, and you would be able to find some way technology is involved. Don't like working in a bank? oh, look, the same job role can be found in a fashion or architecture company, for example. Women who have concerns about returning to work after have children, roles in technology have the flexibility to be able to occur anywhere. Unlike other fields, technology can truly adapt to you. As a result, during my time at university, I went on to discover the areas of technology I loved and the areas that I hated. The world of technology started to be demystified, and I was shown that this was a field where you can come from a background of next to zero knowledge of the area and understand the fundamentals. I realized that coding was not as bad as people made it out to be. And after 4 wonderful years of university, it was finally time for me to become an adult and join the working world. Hence, I followed the traditional path of joining a company on their technology graduate scheme. I had previous experience working in asset management companies and knew I wanted to remain in that field, so I went to work for Barclays as a systems management engineer in the, wait for it, Global Technology Infrastructure Department. And it was here I further confirmed the notion that technology is a career for life. I was in a community of people who had varying levels of experience. There were subject matter experts in the field, people who were proficient in archaic programming languages, and people who had transferred in from non-technical courses at university. For 4 years, I developed the skills that I had learned at university, utilizing technologies such as Spring Boot, REST APIs, Java, CSS, HTML, and AngularJS for redesigning the UI with an agile approach. I know a lot of technology buzzwords, but that's not the point. I got into technology because I liked how you could physically see how the work you were doing fundamentally aided in the improvement of something for someone, be it the company or the individual. For example, something I developed and designed ended up at Command Center on massive screens, and they were crucial for a whole team's reportings. Something I had created was being utilized, proved to me that my initial thoughts about computing and technology in general were correct. And I was curious about what was next to discover in this field. This curiosity continued until my 4th year at Barclays, when I suddenly noticed that a new career checkbox had emerged and was being unfulfilled. You see, I loved public speaking and I loved communicating with clients, but that was just not occurring on the scale I wanted it to. Like many others, I found I had spent the last part of the year trying to compensate for the lack of this by joining various activities such as Toastmasters and attempting to learn Korean. However, this missing checkbox started to become more apparent in my daily role, and COVID-19 condensed how little large-scale communication I did in my role. I once again found myself asking questions about the trajectory of my life. Once more, I asked, would I be happy to keep on this career path, or was this need for more work-focused communication a career-changing, life-changing priority? And like before, the answer was clear. And so I went on the hunt for a new adventure. Unfortunately for me, I fell into the classic trap of fear-provoked avoidance. I had not factored in the fear of stepping away from what I knew was my life's norm. Although the concept of changing from one career to another was lessened due to me wanting to take a lateral step compared to a straight up swap, it wasn't as if I was looking to leave my technical acumen high and dry. I simply wanted to incorporate more communicational aspects. The question that caused this fear was whether I wanted to leave the industry, which would result in a fundamental shift in the way I worked. I thought this would be a big change. Hence, my fear had grown to unprecedented levels. But fortunately, a friend had suggested I look into the growth mindset. And as if the stars had aligned, I read a quote in one of my Toastmasters meetings, which changed my perspective on consultancy. You see, Terry Pratchett said, "Why do you go away? So you can come back. So you can see the place you came from with new eyes and extra colors. And the people there see you differently too. Coming back to where you started is not the same as never leaving." Consultancy presented a ladder of growth that I would not have been able to climb in industry. I started to look more into consultancy, and it became synonymous with a magical revolving door. The destinations of the projects I would be working on was to be determined. However, I knew that when I came back, I would be changed for the better. I learned that this field would force me to evolve. I would further understand what I liked and did not like and the company styles that suited me. Ultimately, I would have control over the pathway I took. And instead of looking for the checklist outside of the company, I had the ability to navigate myself to opportunities that fulfilled that internally. Eventually, I landed on Capco, and the more I learned about the culture, the work ethics, and the clients they worked with, I realized that it was a role and a company that fulfilled everything that I loved about my current company, Barclays. But it just filled those gaps that I had identified. And since joining Capco, this has been confirmed tenfold. It is a company that is large, but has maintained the vibe of a startup. And specifically as a solution architect, I wear multiple hats for multiple different disciplines. And my history in technical coding and industry allowed me to tackle problems differently. I've had the ability to work in large teams to small teams in different fields within the financial services, such as insurance and banking, and in different business areas, such as data. I have often described consultancy as the ultimate career move because where else will you be able to test out various different companies and projects? And I ask you, what other career best aligns with someone who has been eternally curious better than this? So here we are. You've made it. As I draw to the end of this talk, I ask you to think about what I said at the beginning. You initially saw someone who got from point A to B in the most traditional way, a computer science student working in a technology firm. Truly groundbreaking. And as you came to find out, my path in its entirety was not linear. And if it wasn't for my curiosity and questioning, I could have very easily done something else with my life. As a result, if you take anything away from my story, I ask that you keep being curious. Don't let complacency and fear keep you on a path you do not want to be on. Follow your interests, see what is available. Signing up for this webinar was a good step, but keep in mind what Malcolm X once said. If not now, then when? If not me, then who? Thank you. And on the next slide, you will see a summary of what I just spoke about in case you lost me in the middle of there. But thank you, everyone. I will now pass back.
Thank you very much, Zoe, Klaudia, and Kiah, for your presentations and showing us some insight into your stories and your careers. Absolutely brilliant. So now it's time for us to get into some questions from our Q&A. So we'll start with some questions that have come from our audience through the registration link. Zoe, first one is for yourself. Are entry-level jobs good for someone with 2 years experience in coding?
So that's a fantastic question. I believe that for me personally, my answer to this question would be that yes and no. I think it depends on what type of job and what type of roles, entry-level roles you want to be doing. For example, say you've been coding in Java for a whole year, but you don't really know what business area then you are in, then an entry-level job would be fine. However, if you're already been coding for fun for 2 years and you feel competent enough, I am always an advocate for apply anyway. As Kiah said in her speech, apply anyway. The worst thing that they can do is reject you. But if you do make it through, one, that's going to be a massive confidence boost. Two, you're going to learn things intensely. So if you're considering it whether you should do it or whether you could do it, I would just apply anyway and just see if you can get your foothold in there, because I think the opportunities for an entry-level job and above, the worst thing that they can say, as I said, is no. And then you're like, okay, maybe I'll apply for something lower, but they could say yes. And I think that's a better perspective to have.
Yeah, 100%, I agree. And it's definitely good to get that experience, even interviewing, technical tests, stuff like that, so you can gauge what it's like in the working world and what companies expect of you. So next question here for Kiah. What are some of the key things you/employers are looking for in a candidate that has taken a non-traditional route to get into the tech field? For example, no university degree, self-taught, or like camp graduates?
From a really practical perspective, if you're looking for a software development role specifically, so if you're going to be coding within that role, which is my forte, you're going to want to know how to code a bit. So you're going to want to know some sort of foundational takeaways from software development. That's the reality of the situation. The things you can actually add to that, which will set you apart from other more traditional candidates, are that if you've got prior professional experience. So for example, when I joined Capco, I had a 7-year career before that. That meant that I have good communication skills, which are a learned skill, especially in a professional environment. It means that I know how to work in a team well. It means that I can talk to people from all sorts of different levels amongst the professional hierarchy, whether you officially have one or not. It means that I actually have experience with clients, so I know how to talk to clients. That's a major win. So using all of the skill sets you have from other areas of your life and selling those to an employer, whether they know that they want them or not, is really useful. As soon as you bring those things up, quite often employers go into an interview thinking about specific software things, but once you start demonstrating your other areas of skills, for like whether it's communication or whatever, business skills, they will suddenly realize that there's an extra added value there.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's about leveraging the sort of non-technical skills and applying them to a tech role. Brilliant. So next question here. For yourself, Klaudia, how to transform from traditional technology? How would you transform from a traditional technology consultant role to emerging technologies consultant role, and what would be the sort of scope and progression of that?
I like this question. I think this kind of lies within my interest as well. So because the design is so present in just what defines me as a person, I took a lot of UX and human-computer interaction modules at uni as well. So I guess this question sort of asks about stuff like augmented reality, virtual realities, metaverse, possibly, all of those, something else, just I guess cloud. So what I did at uni was just purely, again, from that interest that there is just so much more than the traditional coding. So I would say actually the research, that looking at some research papers, basically just having a quick Google, what is basically going on there, what the big companies are doing. That's kind of how I started with the augmented reality. That's what I did for my master thesis. Actually combining, looking something multidisciplinary fields. My personal research was like that as well, between architecture, applying augmented reality in architecture industry. So I think having maybe a look in the disciplines that you are now and how that can be changed, which is already a great starter just where you are to see where you can go. I think, doing research. I mean, obviously in the rear of social media, just TikTok, Instagram, all of this is all a great platform. Use LinkedIn. I just was just looking specifically for like titles like metaverse architect, all of this emerging titles that are just not there yet. So platforms like Design, for example, was great. They're like creative but still technology focused. So yeah, just doing a lot of Googling, a lot of researching, and then just directly messaging people. Like I just did that. I said, hey, it looks great. What are you doing? I have no idea what metaverse architect is, but would like to hear all about it. So I definitely reaching out to people directly, and you can get a lot of insights from what they are doing. I know of a friend who also just transferred just like that. He's working with metaverse now. It was completely unrelated, and they just started the chat. So yeah, just talk to people.
Yeah, definitely taking like a proactive and a direct approach, I think. Yeah, brilliant advice. So I do have a question from our Q&A. It's just in regards to Google certificates. I'm not entirely sure, Kiah, if you want to answer this one, or anyone, just unmute yourself. Do employers value a Google professional certificate? Is it like a core thing that you look for when looking at CVs or hiring for your teams?
Really depends. Depends on what you're going for, who you're working for. Certificates are great. Like, there's no doubt about it. Certificates look great on your CV. There's something that people can pinpoint and say, okay, they've got that, and they've been able to demonstrate some knowledge. But really, it depends on what certificate you've done. Have you done like an engineering certificate? Have you done an architecture certificate? And what role are you applying for? Because if it's not directly relevant to that role, it might not necessarily come up in an interview. It can definitely give you some leverage and a bonus point, but you definitely don't need it to go into a software role. So yeah, it basically it never hurts to have it. It's always an added bonus, but you don't need it unless perhaps you're going into something really senior and specific.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much, Kiah, for that one. Zoe, a question for yourself. Looking back, what would you have done differently for your career in hindsight?
In hindsight is golden. I think this is a really easy question for me. I think, as you've the way that I would answer this is, looking back on my career, what would I do differently is I would move quicker. In the sense, I think that yes, I enjoyed the 4 years that I spent at the companies, and I enjoyed pondering and having that like curious nature. But at the same time, looking back, I'm like, well, why did I wait so long? Why did I wait so long? Why did I let that fear stop me from doing stuff? Why did I think, oh, maybe I'm not good enough for this role? And I was quite happy being in my tiny bubble. So my looking back on life, that's not just in career-wise, that's in like life-wise. I've realized that once you initially think it, so once you think, oh, I would be curious to like change my career, that's when you should start putting in the steps to change it. You shouldn't just think, oh, I feel as if I could change my career, I'm not that happy here. And then you wait. And then 1 year goes down the line and 2 years go down the line, and you're still asking yourself that same question. I think it's being proactive once you have that initial thought on trying to make those changes. That's what I would say.
Cool. Thank you so much for that one. One for Klaudia here. How do you encourage women to not give up during their career journey and to stay resilient, I guess?
Yeah, well, stay inspired.
Inspired, yeah.
Yeah, stay inspired to just keep you going, because it is going to be tough, very tough. Like, you're gonna cry. I just love everything that Kiah said there before about the imposter syndrome. It will just make you cry, and you're gonna feel like you might not fit in at the beginning as well. So stay inspired, seek out like-minded people, YouTube, TikTok, where you will find me very soon as well, Instagram. Just try to find people who are in the same boat as you, so you can relate to their experiences and the struggles that they are going with. Be curious, right, Zoe? So attend conference, attend events that spark your interest, even if that might not be something that you are doing at the moment. It could just, be your next career switch, right? I really like Carly Kloss, for example. She's one of my favorites, in sort of showing that there's always a room to change, and how you can just build a community around that, and sort of inspire more people. So definitely building a safety net for yourself, and just this seeking a mentor, for example, someone that you can, honestly talk to about what you're going through. Yeah, I would also say, just remember that you're trying to progress and not impress anyone. You're going in your own pace, at your own pace, and it's fine. Like, just the way you are right now, it's perfectly fine. So just focus on doing the next great day in your work, at your job, and it's gonna be fine. you on a daily basis, you probably will not feel like you're learning so much or changing too much, but then you're going to look back 6 months and you're going to see, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know this either. So this is that's what I like to ask myself at the end of the day as well. Do I just know a little bit more about something that I didn't know at the start of the day? And if the answer is yes, I do, then that's all good.
Yeah, definitely. It's the small wins sometimes, isn't it? I completely agree with you. Kiah, next one for you. Do you think enough is done to help women get into the tech industry?
No, I don't. I don't think there's ever enough that can be done. We're talking about changing centuries of culture around women and not sort of giving women a platform to work on, let alone in technology or business. So really, it's like, can there ever be enough? It's going to take a long time to balance that field out. There's a lot more being done to get juniors into companies and balance out that gender split, but there's still a huge gap within seniors and leadership where women are yet to sort of progress up to those companies, and there's a huge obstacle around working culture. Like the working culture and business culture was built for men. It wasn't built to accommodate women as much. So there's work being done around it, but more does need to happen. And having conversations like this, attending events like this really helps. It helps to have that conversation constantly flowing, but we constantly need to do more. There's never enough that can be done for that. And you touch on women, so I think the gender split is spoken about a lot, but then there's also women with minorities as well. So it just gets more and more, the levels get deeper and deeper, and so much needs to be done to give us a platform to step up on.
Definitely, I completely agree with you there. So next question for Zoe. How do you yourself achieve the work-life balance, would you say?
I would say that I achieve the work-life balance by doing it immediately. I as soon as I joined a job, or as soon as I join a project, or as soon as I join a group of people in general, I establish my work-life balance and I establish those boundaries. It's very easy, especially when you're in those junior roles, to get so absorbed with I must do this, I must complete this. Everyone has their eyes on me because I'm so junior. You feel as if you have to be the grunt and do all of the work. But the reality is that regardless of your position, you should be able to maintain a life outside of work. You should be able to maintain a good mental health routine. And so if you establish it at the beginning, it sets the expectations. The people who are meeting you know, oh, well, this is how Zoe is and what she does, and this is how she performs best. I'm not asking you to trade performance for your life balance. Try and find a happy medium. And if you're within a team and you feel oh my God, I'm incredibly overwhelmed and I can't get a handle of my life balance because it's just seeping into everything that I do, then communicating with both your team leads or the people below you or your mentors or even just someone else on your team, so that you can share that burden. Because I believe there was a saying, it's say for example, I have a whole pie burden. If I give one slice to someone else, then I'm carrying less of the weight of that pie of stress. And the more people you hand it to, the less you're carrying. And so eventually you're oh, my problems were massive, but has now been condensed. And your team leader could turn around to you and be do you know what? I understand the workload that you're doing is too much. So I'll take some of this for you, or I'll give this to someone else so that you can have an opportunity to catch up, because no one intentionally wants to see you suffering and drowning in workload and stress. They want to see you performing well, because you performing well contributes to everyone performing well. So I think maintaining that life balance early on, or sharing the stress with other people, are ways to maintain that life balance. And also be curious outside of your working life. You have multiple hours of the day to dedicate to just improving your life outside of work. Focus on what you like there and the passions that you find there.
No, I definitely agree, and some great advice there. Just don't suffer in silence, communicate it, and I'm pretty sure everything will be okay. So next question for Klaudia. What should we be telling younger generations of women?
What a novel question. Well, I would say that you are going to be different than majority of people that you're going to meet in the industry, and that's okay. I I so often meet at work with the idea that, well, you don't look like a software engineer, like you're extroverted, like you're funny sometimes, I just don't conform to that idea of like what people have. And I think that this is the case for many women. When I was teaching this course last summer as well, I saw a great variety of talent. And what I see is that maybe in the tech sector, there's more like a typical stereotype of a guy there, the tech bro. Whereas I think it attracts a great variety of women from very different backgrounds, and that's good to see. So you're gonna actually meet women that are probably somehow similar to you. The current team I work on is all men. I'm the only woman. This was the same case before. So that is gonna feel very different to all the other people working on the team. So it's also important that, as a junior or as a this new generation, Gen Z, it's okay to hold the space. And not only that, it's okay to hold the space boldly. You are free to choose whatever you want, whoever you like, the tech stack you would like to be working with, the role, whether that's, a metaverse architect or your job title that does not even exist yet. You don't have to settle for what the majority is doing. There's going to be endless roles. And again, on the imposter syndrome, which was a huge one for me when you change careers, like it will manifest in so many different ways. So just, observe yourself and try to catch yourself as well when that happens. And, just give yourself a little pat on the back because you probably are doing great. So I'll say that.
No, I love that. I love that. So we've got a question come through our Q&A, and I'm going to pose this one to you, Kiah. Is there any projects, maybe just to do with front end, that you recommend working on to add to your profile and potentially strengthen it? So maybe technologies or front end, like the React, Vue.js, Angular, for example. Like, is there any projects or open source things that you'd recommend to work on to add to your profile?
Really depends what your goals are with it. So if you are, it sounds like a vague answer, but it's true. So if you are looking for something that's just popular and like will increase your chances of a job, anything JavaScript, React based is going to do that. One thing I would say is if you are going to learn a framework, it depends where you're coming from as well. Like I'm coming from sort of a junior perspective and getting into those entry level roles. If you've sort of just learned front end development, I'd say homing in and really nailing down JavaScript as a whole is important, and then adding on a framework. So if you just go delve straight into React, it's going to totally overwhelm you. That being said, it's a great framework to learn. So that's always going to increase your chances of a job if that's your goal. If your goal is to actually just contribute to projects because you want to practice your skill set and that's what you enjoy, then my advice would just be to contribute to something that you feel strongly about or passionate about and enjoy and can actually understand like the domain and the business behind it, because that will give you the motivation to contribute to it. Or come up with your own project. So come up with that project from scratch and architect it, maybe build a web app, or even just building yourself a portfolio. That's a great one. If you build yourself a website portfolio, you'll be passionate about it because it's something that's personal to you. You can frame it in the way that you want to frame it. You can use whatever tech stack you want to use to do that. And you can have the added benefit of displaying all of your projects, which can contribute to whatever your goals are.
Okay, brilliant. And thanks for sharing some insight on that. Very helpful information, Kiah. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. I just want to say a big thank you for our presenters today, Zoe, Klaudia, and Kiah. Thank you so much for sharing your career journeys and giving some helpful tips for similar people in your positions. I think it's been great. I'd just like to end by saying the team at Capco are actively hiring right now, from software engineers to DevOps and others. And as a follow-up, after this, we will provide a link for their careers page where you could find the list of open positions as well as their benefits. So if you are interested in career opportunities with Capco, please register via the form in the email, and we'll come back to you. So all relevant links will be shared after this, and we will also answer any unanswered questions that have come through the Q&A. But just want to say thank you so much for attending today, and I hope everyone has a great Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye.